Welcome to Mr. C's Helpful Hints for the Young Instrumentalist, Episode 2. The star of this episode is a member of the woodwind family called the clarinet. The basic parts of the clarinet are the mouthpiece and a round, open-ended metal piece called the ligature. A short section called the barrel joint. The shorter of the two longer pieces of the clarinet called the upper joint. And the lower joint, which can be identified by the thumb rest, which is located at the back of the piece. And finally we have the bell joint, which receives its name from its bell shape. To assemble the clarinet, we are first going to start with the upper joint. A very important part of the assembly process is the greasing of each end of the clarinet, which contains a substance called the cork. Keeping the cork moist with cork grease will make putting each section together easier and keep the instrument out of the repair shop. One item that should be paid attention to when connecting the upper and lower joints are the small connecting rods found on the sides of both joints. The rod on the upper joint must fit over the rod on the lower joint. Attaching each section of the clarinet should be done with combined twisting and pushing motion. Once the upper and lower sections have been joined, make sure that the open holes in both joints line up. The next piece to be attached is the bell section, which fits on the end of the lower joint. Once again, make sure to grease the cork before attaching the bell. And also remember that a combined twisting and pushing motion should be used when attaching each section of the clarinet. Next, we're going to attach the short section of the clarinet called the barrel joint. The barrel joint is placed on the end of the upper joint. Again, the cork is greased before attachment is made. One end of the barrel joint is larger in diameter than the other, so if you first don't succeed, just flip the section and try again. Again, a combined twisting and pushing motion is made to attach the joint. To achieve a closer camera angle for the placement of the reed on the mouthpiece, I've decided to put the reed on the mouthpiece before attaching the mouthpiece section to the clarinet. After placing the large open end of the ligature over the mouthpiece, we will next slide the flat side of the reed over the opening of the mouthpiece, carefully placing the reed far enough down until you can see a hairline of black above the reed. The ligature should be placed far enough down on the reed until you can see what is called the horseshoe-shaped cut of the reed. Gradually tighten the screws of the ligature until the fit is snug around the reed. Be careful not to over-tighten the screws of the ligature, as this will hinder tone production once playing has begun. And again, ideally, this step should be done after the mouthpiece has been placed on the barrel joint of the fully assembled clarinet. And finally, we're going to put the assembled mouthpiece section onto the barrel end of the clarinet. Once again, first we're going to make sure that we grease our cork, making sure that all the surface area of the cork has been greased. And then, with a combined twisting and pushing motion, we put the mouthpiece section into the barrel end of the clarinet. Once assembled, the reed should line up with the open hole on the back of the upper joint of the clarinet. proper hand position while playing, we are first going to start with the right hand. The right hand thumb is placed under the thumb rest on the lower joint. The thumb should never be allowed to be inserted past the base of the thumbnail. The right little finger lightly touches the F key and the remaining fingers fall into a relaxed curve no more than an inch above the open holes. The left hand thumb has double duty of closing the tone hole and operating the register key found on the back of the upper joint. The left little finger lightly touches the E key, and again the remaining fingers fall into a relaxed curve no more than an inch above the open holes. The disassembly process of the clarinet is basically the reverse of the steps discussed earlier in this episode, but should include the drying out of the interior of each section with an item called a swab. A swab is a piece of material tied to a weighted string that is gently pulled through the barrel of each joint before it is placed back in the case. Making this a part of the playing routine will keep the clarinet out of the repair shop with symptoms of sticky pads and keep the mouthpiece blowing freely and free of foreign material. One other item of note, every clarinet should have a protective cap that can be placed over the mouthpiece when the clarinet isn't in use. This will save the reed from being chipped accidentally. I hope this episode has been an aid to your young clarinetists, and you can find more information about the continuing series of Mr. C's helpful hints on my website at web.mac.com/mcaruth2.